protection for the international press in the Gaza Strip, a week after Donald Trump made a similar plea. The United States must make it clear to the Zionist entity that banning and censoring media organizations and targeting or threatening members of the press is unacceptable and must stop, thundered 16 Democrats and Independent Bernie Sanders in a statement. In their letter to the head of the U.S. diplomacy and unwavering ally of the Zionist entity, the senators urged the State Department to call on the Zionist authorities to protect journalists in Gaza and allow the international media access to the Palestinian territory ravaged by 22 months of unprecedented barbaric aggression. When asked about the subject in the Oval Office, President Trump replied, "I would be very happy if journalists went to the Gaza Strip. It's very dangerous for journalists, but I would like it," he said. And UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for the bombs to be silenced in a message ahead of the International Day Against Nuclear Tests observed every year on August 29. Mr. Guterres urged world leaders to stop playing with fire, stressing the need to silence the bombs as the world faces rising geopolitical tensions and growing nuclear risks, including the threat of renewed nuclear testing. He recalled that 2025 would mark 80 years since the first nuclear test, noting that over 2,000 tests had been taken place, leaving lasting scars such as displacement, environmental contamination, and long-term health crises like cancer and chronic diseases, while undermining global trust and peace. Mr. Guterres underlined that the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty is the only binding international instrument to end nuclear tests and insisted that its long-delayed entry in force was now more urgent than ever, calling on all countries to ratify it without delay or conditions. And the Peace and Security Council, PSC, of the African Union has reiterated in a communique sanctioning the proceedings of its public session held in Addis Ababa under the chairmanship of Algeria the commitment of member states to protect the right of education for all, particularly in areas for the continent or of the continent affected by conflicts and crises. Ms. Al-Sharfi has the details.
The Peace and Security Council also stressed the need for member states to step up efforts to guarantee the right of inclusive education for all and the protection of education systems and schools in situations of instability and armed conflicts on the continent. It also emphasized the need to strengthen the protection of children in conflict situations and to provide the necessary support to address the issue of guaranteeing the right to education and schooling, including for children in refugee camps in Africa. Furthermore, the Peace and Security Council welcomed the significant contribution of Professor Mohammed Belhussein, outgoing Commissioner for Education, Science, Technology and Innovation, particularly with regard to the progress made under the AU's 2024 theme on education, thus contributing to the continental effort to promote education for all in Africa, including in difficult contexts such as crisis and conflict zones, notably through the development of education systems and the promotion of skills on the continent.
And finally, in Sudan, a group of Sudanese doctors have warned against an imminent humanitarian catastrophe in Al-Fashir in North Darfur state as the health sector collapses in the country, which has been ravaged by armed conflict since April 2023. More details with our colleague Said Bouazi.
In a statement reported by the media, the Sudanese Doctors Network said that thousands of residents are at risk of death as the city's hospitals are running out of essential medicines, particularly for chronic diseases, antibiotics and emergency supplies. According to the same source, medical staff are unable to cope with the increase in the number of wounded and sick in the context of ongoing fighting. This situation threatens an imminent humanitarian catastrophe, warned the network, calling for urgent international and regional intervention to provide medicines and open safe humanitarian corridors to allow for the uninterrupted delivery of aid. Furthermore, the statement accuses the Rapid Support Forces of laying siege to the city and cutting off supplies, holding them entirely responsible for the resulting deaths and human suffering. Saving the lives of civilians in Al-Fashir is an urgent priority that cannot be delayed, the network insists, calling on the Sudanese health authorities to coordinate with international organizations to ensure emergency aid, including food and medical supplies. This alert comes a few days after an artillery attack on the Abu Shuk camp for displaced persons in Al-Fashir, which left at least 31 people dead, including women and children.
And with this last piece of news, we come to the end of this news bulletin. Time now for our weekly program with my colleague Jamal Slimani, a program on tourism in Algeria. And with that, we leave you. We'll meet you again tomorrow for a fresh edition of our news bulletin. Thank you and goodbye.
Welcome to your weekly program, Destination Algeria. I'm Jamal Slimani. There are a number of great destinations in Algeria just waiting to be discovered. A curious mixture of cultures and influences, Algeria has something interesting to see in just about every city. The country is also the first largest on the African continent, so you can be sure that there are plenty of towns and cities to visit. Let's visit Algeria's fascinating destinations, you and I, together. Algeria's architecture is interesting and diverse. Since the country has virtually always been a crossroads between East and West, it has seen many different cultural and architectural influences over the years. In ancient times, Algeria's strategic position meant that the major military powers of the time would do their utmost to gain control over it. As a result, Algeria has seen Phoenician, Roman, Vandal, Byzantine, Arab, Turk, and French invasions, each leaving their own distinctive influence on the country. With each conquest, new buildings were constructed and changes were made to government. Whilst not all these ancient cultures have a significantly notable bearing on the architecture in Algeria today, there are a few who have. The most notable is that of the Arab invasions, which has perhaps had the most lasting and extensive effect. There are, however, signs in other cultures all over the country, from Phoenician road signs to ancient Roman ruins or French-speaking Arabs. Most find that the best place to start a tour of the country's architecture is in Algiers. The city was founded over 1,000 years ago and has seen beautiful ancient masterpieces survive alongside somewhat newer additions. The old part of the city is the best place to head if you want to see historical buildings. The Kasbah, with its crowded lanes and markets, is supported and surrounded by some beautiful old buildings. You will also find 11th century mosques and Moorish places here. Other places worth seeing are Notre Dame d'Afrique Church and the Maqam Shahid or Martyr's Monument and the Jardin d'Essai. Once you've seen all you can in Algiers, you might try a tour of the surrounding towns as you head out towards Timgad. Timgad features a number of beautiful and important Roman ruins. The ruins are well preserved due to the natural Algerian atmosphere, and you will be able to see delightful mosaics and amphitheater and a number of other artifacts. Other interesting architecture in Algeria features French colonial-style fortresses, unique rounded mud huts in rural areas, and ancient colossal Arab-styled homes. Mosques and other religious buildings also tend to show interesting trends in architecture. Of course, recent times have seen the building of newer, more modern structures, but these too may be of interest to you and should not be overlooked. If you're going to Algeria soon, take a tour of the many varied and beautiful architectural delights to be found in this unique country. You don't have to be a builder or an architect to appreciate the graceful aerial buildings. With Islam being the dominant religion of Algeria, it comes as no surprise that the majority of the country's sacred and religious sites are connected to the Islamic faith. One or more mosques can be found in virtually every Algerian town and city. While the primary purpose of a mosque is a center of worship, it is also a place for learning and for taking care of matters relating to the Islamic community it serves. With their beautifully shaped domes, spires, and intricate decoration, the distinctive architecture of mosques generally makes them stand out among the surrounding buildings. And while tourists may not be permitted to enter them, mosques are nevertheless viewed as tourist attractions. Of the many mosques found in Algeria, 3 stand out as having significant historical value: the Great Mosque of Tlemcen, the Great Mosque of Algiers, and the Kechaoua Mosque in Algiers, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Other mosques of note include the El Kautar Mosque in Blida, Shifa, the Lakhdariya Mosque in the northern Algerian town of Lakhdariya, the Mosque of Constantine, and the Pasha Mosque in Oran. Located on the north side of the city of Algiers on a cliff overlooking the bay, the Notre Dame d'Afrique, a Roman Catholic church, was completed in 1872 and continues to serve as the Basilica of Algiers. Lavishly decorated with mosaic patterns and religious pictures, the church has the following inscription on the curved wall behind the altar: Notre Dame d'Afrique, priez pour nous et pour les musulmans, meaning Our Lady of Africa, pray for us and for the Muslims. Visiting some of the religious